Clive Huntley. My company is called Eyedot Europe Limited. We're based in Devizes, and we're a company that specialises in electronic repair support and manufacture of products that go into military and commercial flight simulators and also into the National Railway Network and London Underground. Eyedot started in 1989, so we're in our 20th year, and originally I was service manager for a UK-based company who manufactured mainframe computer systems, and a lot of the systems that we built went into the military and commercial flight simulators. I thought 20 years ago that we could probably do better than the manufacturer, so two of us left, set up Eyedot and started to go after the business that was previously owned by the manufacturer. In fact, we were quite successful. We took most of their service business in Ireland and quite a lot of it in the UK, and we took customers in something like 31 different countries around the world. So that was our inception. We are an IT company originally, and over the 20 years we've developed much more into the electronic repair and support. We went through several accountants before we came to Clear Vision and fell out with most of them for various reasons. They were either too big and too expensive for a start-up company, it cost us a lot of money, or occasionally they were too cheap and didn't have the infrastructure and the backup to give us the service that we needed. I think on average we found that most of the accountants we dealt with really were only interested in the numbers that we were producing, and they were only interested in generating invoices as frequently as possible to take money from us, without really giving us the breadth of knowledge and advice that we needed for the company as a whole. In 2000 we took the decision to move the business away from Windsor and relocate it down to Devizes in the West Country. At the same time, it seemed a good idea then to look again at the accountants that we used, and traditionally most of the accountancy groups we'd worked with at Eyedot were quite narrow from our perspective. They do the audits, they do the annual figures, they give us some taxation advice, but not an awful lot more. And we realised that what we also needed was a relationship with a company that could help us with a number of other issues in the company, whether it was a bit of blue sky thinking for new marketing ideas, or some further help with numbers or personnel issues. So we came and talked to Rob at Clear Vision, and it became apparent that there was a team of people here that we could interact with really well and use them as a sounding board. We could use them to bounce new ideas off of. We could come and talk about issues in the company that were not necessarily directly related just to accountancy issues. So for us it seemed like a good group of people to work with, and we signed up with Clear Vision, I guess, just after the year 2000. When we first came to talk to Clear Vision and then latterly to work with them, obviously we started to meet the various personalities involved, and we quite quickly found that they were all a fairly outgoing, friendly bunch of people that we could develop a close working relationship with, rather than perhaps the sort of arm's length relationship we'd had previously with some of the other accountants. And that quite quickly developed into a relationship where we felt very comfortable that we could come and have an open and honest discussion and ask for advice. Before 2000 and before we came to talk to Clear Vision, all of our accounts had been carried out using the ledger and the pen. And unfortunately with that system we really didn't know from one day to the next what our costs were, what our turnover was, what our profit was. Clear Vision were very proactive in pushing us down the road of developing management information. So in fact what we did, we took the Sage package through Clear Vision and some additional training from Clear Vision, and using that as a basis we then began to produce management accounts. That's made a huge difference to our business in that we now know on a month-to-month basis what our costs are, what we're turning over, what our profit line is likely to be, and with the figures then that we have, we can begin to plan for both short-term and long-term for the future. Once we had access to the management information, we began to realise that we could use those details to help to grow the business. So, for example, when we first moved down from Windsor, we had a fairly small unit in Clear, and because we could see some trends through the management accounts and begin to understand the business, how it was changing and growing, we then took the decision based on that information to buy a bigger unit, which we're now occupying in Devizes. So that's an example of the fact that the management accounts actually gave us the basis to make a decision for growth on. So once a year we sit down with the Clear Vision team, and that's usually Rob and maybe the taxation person and perhaps someone else, and just review the set of numbers that we had for the previous fiscal year. Now in the past, and working with the other accountants, that tended to be a fairly routine, that's your turnover, that's your profit and loss, that's your corporation tax liability, with not a great amount of other detail added to that. We find with Clear Vision that we're also given some trend analysis for the last 5 years, which is very useful because it gives us a feel for the direction the company is taking from a financial point of view. We also find that in the annual meeting we then start to look beyond the headline figures, and we dig a little bit more deeply into what's actually going on within the company in terms of revenues and costs. And normally that then gives rise to quite an open discussion about where we've gone wrong, what we're doing right, what we should be doing for the next 1, 2, 3 years. And to me that gives us a great added value for the service that we get from Clear Vision. It's quite useful for me from time to time to be able to sit down with Rob Walshs and discuss where we are and where we're going. Rob's immensely likeable as a person. I find him very easy to work with, and for me he's probably the best sounding board that I've got. Obviously as a financial guy he's got an understanding of numbers, but he's also got a good understanding of personnel and the way a company should work. So to me a lot of the added value is sitting down with Rob for half an hour and just chewing through a whole range of different issues, and that can encompass anything from marketing to sales to personnel. I always get an unbiased opinion. Rob's not backward in coming forward if he thinks I'm wrong, which again I value because sometimes we're not always right. So I get a lot of useful advice in talking to Rob, and I always welcome those meetings. As a company we grew quite steadily from 1989 up to the middle 1990s, and then we went through some quite difficult times. There were a lot of market changes, some of the business we had went away, and as a company we shrank until sort of around about late 1990s we were a lot smaller than we were. Since that time we've begun to grow, we've begun to produce more products, we've begun to take on more customers, and really with the help and advice we've had from Clear Vision, that's helped us to determine the direction that we need to be going into. Really since the last 12 or 24 months we've begun to grow again. This year we should see turnover up some 40% over the last financial year, and I think a part of that really has to be due to the advice and consultancy that we've had from Rob and his team at Clear Vision. There's no doubt that working with Clear Vision has made my life a lot easier and a lot more pleasant. Again, if you look at the past with the relationships we've had previously, they've always been quite remote. We find now that the relationship with Clear Vision is a lot more open. It's very beneficial to us in that we can ask all sorts of questions, get very useful advice. It's like working with a team of friends.